So PowerPoint 5 here, our goals today. Actually, I just realized they're not in the beginning. Our goals today are to kind of be able to get through and understand what our role is in the realm of nutritional advice, right? Like, what are we allowed to say? What are we allowed to do? How are we going to conduct like a session? I've had students who graduate and decide, you know what, most of this 9 months is spent around personal training, right? I've had students graduate and just go right into like the nutrition consultation instead. They ended up just using that. They're not doing much of the training side of things. I've had other students go into like life coaching. There's a lot of things adjacent to one-on-one, like lifting, weights and stuff. Some people go outdoors, some people go indoors, some people go bodybuilding, some people go powerlifting, some people go, sports, and some people go, directly into the nutrition. And whether or not you think that like, you're not going to end up in like the nutrition realm as much as that's okay. We do want to have this basic understanding of stuff. And, there's going to be at least a conversation here and there about how to do some of this. So we are going to talk a little bit today about like how that consultation actually works. What are some of the tools in our tool belt? What we're allowed to say and things like that. So right off the bat, we need to very, very clearly define like what our role is, what we're allowed to do, and what we are, almost more importantly, not allowed to do, right? So we are going to fall under this general blanket term. We are a nutritional counselor, AKA a nutritionist, right? And so like, when I say nutritionist, we got to remember that like, there technically is no such thing as a nutritionist on like a government certified level. So yeah, you are going to be certified as like a fitness nutrition specialist. That's your FNS, right? And that's great. Like, that's a really good certification to have because it does add to your tool belt. It's something you put on your resume, and it does like elevate you, at least reputation wise above like someone who doesn't have that. But like I said, like if you ever somehow hurt someone with like food, right? Let's say you prescribe someone to eat something. You're like, hey, I want you to eat a cup of broccoli every day, even if something as simple as like that, right? And then something happens dietary wise that makes them sick, and then they decide to like go after you, which, this is a crazy scenario, but if it were to happen, you're going to go up in front and it's like, well, prove that you're an expert who's allowed to prescribe, someone food. And it's like, well, I'm a nutritionist, right? And it's like, that doesn't prove to me anything. It proves to me that like you took a class and you learned a little bit of something, but it does not put you on a level that on the same level as like a doctor or a dietitian, who are the types of people who actually can prescribe foods. So we got to make sure that we stay within what is called our scope of practice, right? And the scope of practice is basically, it's the line in the sand that you are allowed to walk up to, lean over, but you are not allowed to cross, right? Like, that's kind of what we're looking at here. Same thing with dietitians, right? On the total opposite side of things, like dietitians may be allowed to like prescribe diets and stuff, but they cannot tell someone what exercises to do. If they were to like write someone a fitness program, that's totally outside of their scope of practice, right? Like they're absolutely allowed to say like, hey, you should work out more. Like that's great. That's fine. That's totally allowed. That's general, advice, right? We're allowed to say like, hey, you should get some more fruits and vegetables in your diet. Absolutely allowed to say stuff like that. But like I said, what they are not allowed to do is tell someone to do 10 push-ups. We are not allowed to tell someone to eat 10 almonds, right? So that's sort of a very simple breakdown of what we're looking at here. So like I said, we're going to be a nutritional counselor. When you think of like counselor, right, it's kind of like the same thing. Like when you think of like, counselors that you've talked to when you're in high school or wherever, if you've talked to a counselor in any situation, they're there to like help you work through your problems, right? They're there to help you like have a conversation with you and maybe help you like see things in a really fair light. But like they're not giving you therapy, right? Like that's a totally oh my God. Sorry, my stock buddy is keeps like blowing up my phone. They're not there to give you like therapy. They're not therapists. They're not psychologists. They're not psychiatrists, right? They're counselors. They're there to like help you come to, a healthy decision, and then, put that decision in your hands. Well, the same thing is true of us, right? We assist in gaining confidence for making effective dietary changes. Our main role is to educate and encourage healthy decision making. The term that I want you guys to keep in your brains is that we apply a lot of guided self-help, right? We are there like keeping someone on the right path, but they're the ones doing it, right? It's just like, it's just like coaching, right? We're there to be like, hey, to encourage someone like, hey, let's take those training wheels off, buddy. Like, and then maybe we're there holding onto the handlebars and we get them up to speed and then we let go, right? But they're the ones steering the bike. That's really our main role here, right? And that's great because like, it does have all kinds of like really great benefits to it. It helps improve sports performance. It helps improve like overall like dietary adherence. A lot of times, honestly, guys, people do know what they're supposed to eat. Like as shocking as that is to hear, a lot of times people actually have a fairly good idea. I mean, we all know like, oh, the green stuff. Yeah, get some more of that green stuff in your diet. Everybody knows to do it. What they struggle with a lot of times is how to do it. And that's something that we are a very helpful tool with, right? Where you just talk to someone and it's like, hey, like you could very easily increase this by just doing this. Like one of my favorite tips, honestly, like, I'm constantly telling my clients to try to get enough fiber in, and fiber is a really hard thing to get into your diet. And it's like, hey, have a bowl of high fiber cereal as a snack. Like I have my breakfast every morning, I go work out, and then I come back, have a little protein shake. And then when I'm sitting here on the morning call, I have like as a snack, a little tiny bowl of cereal, it's like one of those little, the Ziploc, little tiny circle cup. I just keep cereal and I pour it out, pour that into a bowl, and I'm like ready to eat it. And it's a great snack full of all the fiber I need for the entire day, knocked out in one easy go. So, that's little like tips like that are almost like where that's our, not to make any bad puns here, but that's our bread and butter, that's where we are kind of really hanging out. So we can aid in discovering, macronutrient, micronutrient, and caloric goals from the perspective of educating and assisting. So are we allowed to help someone run their numbers? Absolutely. We're totally allowed to do that, right? We can determine what a general macronutrient distribution, we can help them what a general caloric distribution should be. So, but what we aren't allowed to do is tell them to eat a specific amount, right? So if I were to like run someone's number, I'm just going to pick up the first one that's like really fast. If we look at like a BMR calculator here, this is just a really quick one. I've already got some stuff punched in there. And my client is, if I hit calculate and my client is, performing daily exercise, they're going to need to burn 2,600 calories, So I would run these numbers and be like, okay, so based on your lifestyle and activity, you are burning around 2,600 calories a day, right? So now that I've like educated them on that, and it's like, so we know that weight gain is going to come when there's a calorie surplus, and we know that weight loss will come from a calorie deficit. We know there's about 3,500 calories in a pound of fat. So if you want to lose fat, we need to cut calories below this number that we just ran through this little calculator here. And depending on like how aggressive you want to be with that caloric, reduction, it's going to depend on how many calories you're eating. So if we were to take this down to maybe 2,400 calories, right, that'd be about a 250 calorie deficit every single day. That'll be about a half a pound a week of fat loss. And that's actually a pretty good rate, right? If we wanted to cut it by 1,000 or 500 calories, take it down to 2,100, 2,150 basically, that would be about a pound of weight loss per week. And then like we would have the conversation with our client and say, okay, well, now that we know what some numbers are that you could possibly try to hit, now we got to figure out like, how are we going to get enough carbohydrates? How are we going to get enough protein? How are we going to get enough fat, right? And if we're getting all those things, these are some numbers that you would do, and you can just run them over and over and over again, right? Run them through a couple calculators and show your client what those looks like. That is absolutely within our realm, right? But what we cannot say is you need to eat this much. We cannot tell them, right? In the same, we can say, hey, I want you to do, a mile. I want you to go for a 1 mile walk 3 times this week. That's homework, right? Totally allowed to do that. That's well within our realm, as like physical trainers. But what we cannot say is like, I want you to eat 2,100 calories this week. That is outside. And it's a lot of it is in how you word it, and that's why like you practice this, get specific about how you speak, learn how to talk the talk. That's the kind of stuff that is going to kind of come with experience. What I recommend to you guys is kind of staying a little bit further back when you're first into this until you get really comfortable knowing how to talk about this stuff with your clients. So if when someone says, oh, so what you want me to do is eat 2,100 calories this week. And it's like, nope, that is not what I said. What I said was, if you want to lose, about a pound to a pound and a half this week, eating 2,100 calories would probably do that for you. Right? Like, that's very different from me telling you to eat something, right? So now, on the flip side of things, what about registered dietitians, who are some great people who are resources, at our disposal as trainers? I really recommend, I've got a dietitian friend. I really recommend everybody in here, get yourself a dietitian in your pocket. Make friends with a registered dietitian. So a registered dietitian, or an RD, is a medically trained nutrition professional with specific licensing and specific scope of practice. They are allowed to determine caloric, macronutrient, and micronutrient goals. So they are actually able to tell, rather than from the perspective of educating and like guided self-help, they are able to be like, well, this is how much I want you to eat this week, right? In the same way that your doctor would say, take 2 of these and call me in the morning, right? A dietitian would go, take 2 bananas and call me in the morning. They're totally allowed to do that. They can aid in meal planning and cooking tips. There's actually a weird part of dietitian school that also actually talks about like food prep and food safety and stuff. So there's that. They can create hydration schedules. They'd be like, by noon every day, you should have drunk this much water. By 2 o'clock, and this much, and they are going to address any health-related nutritional questions, right? So dietitians are definitely they are closely related to doctors. And then doctors are also allowed to do all of that because they are also medically trained. And it all has to do with the way that like diet is regulated here in the US, right? Food is considered medicine in the US. And I know that seems kind of weird because when we think of medicine, we think of like, blood pressure medicine and things like that, right? But in this case, like food actually does fall under that category. And so until it is not regulated that way anymore, there is never going to be a scenario where we as personal trainers can tell someone specifically what to eat. So that is the difference between an RD and us, right? Now, actually, any questions on that or comments? Is any of that not clear? Intimidating a little bit? Don't be intimidated by this stuff, by the way. Don't be too afraid of like falling outside of your scope of practice. It is harder to do than you think it is. But anyway, here's the different like pieces of data that we want to start our session with, right? Let's talk about like the kind of the flow of a session, right? Like what is a dietary session going to kind of look like, right? Well, it's actually going to be really, really, really similar to a personal training session. So for some of you guys, Charlie's heard this a million times, but for some of you guys, this will be your first time hearing it. Or maybe, actually, I think I might have mentioned it in PFT 105, but there's kind of a 3-step process for problem solving, right? It's the same 3-step process for everything in the world. You can make it more complicated. You can, expand it to 5 steps. We'll talk about how to do that in the next mod. But like, I really like the 3-step process because it's so simple and it really like everything fits it, right? Like if I don't know like what's going on with my car, right? I take it to a mechanic. The mechanic runs a diagnostic test. So the first thing they need to do is identify very clearly what is going on, like what the problem is, right? And then like they're going to come up with a solution. In this case, like, hey, your rear cap seal is leaking, right? So we need to, our solution is we're going to take the engine out, put a new seal on, and put the engine back in, right? Okay, great. And by the way, if it sounds like I know what I'm talking about, I don't. I just know this is what's wrong with my car right now. And then like, step 3 is they're going to do it. Like step 2, they solve the problem. They come up with a clever solution, take the engine out, fix it, put it back in. And step 3 is like, go do it. Like, go get it done, right? Same thing is true for us as trainers, right? We bring someone in, we do a physical assessment of them, figure out like what muscles are overactive and underactive, ask them what their goals are. And once we've got all of that information, right, we've identified all of the problems and all the information's laid out, and we know what our client wants or what's going on. Now we can implement this, we can solve the problem. We can come up with a solution, right? And so it's like, all right, well, you said you wanted to do this, so we're going to do this. And I noticed that your muscles move this way, so you're also going to do this. Plus, this here is going to set us up for next month, which will carry us forward. So your plan is, this type of stretching, this type of core exercise, this type of cardio, this type of strength training, right? We put it all together in like a really effective plan. And then step 3 is the easy part. Like, let's go. All right, cool. Plan of action. Break. Let's head upstairs. Here's how we're going to attack the defense, right? Like, let's go get this done. So guess what? That process totally applies to our nutrition consultations as well. We are going to start by gathering adequate data about our client. We will come up with a guided self-help plan. And then we will continue to coach our clients as they are implementing that plan, as they're implementing that solution, over the coming weeks, months, years, whatever. So step 1, let's go ahead and break it down, right? Let's talk about gathering data at the beginning of a consultation, right? So first things first, with any client, you are going to gather a little bit of their contact info, and you're going to do what's called a health history questionnaire and a PAR-Q. So a PAR-Q and a health history questionnaire are both non-negotiables when it comes to like what you need to do at the beginning of a session, whether it's a personal training session, a life coaching session, a diet session, a nutrition consultation. No matter what it is, start with your health history questionnaire always in a PAR-Q, right? So NASM's got this up on their website for free, by the way. You can go to nasm.org and go to their download section. I skipped that, I just Googled it, but here's their PAR-Q, right? And it's going to be, just a lot of questions that are all related to cardiovascular health. And if they answer yes to any of these questions, make 100% certain that your client has doctor's clearance before engaging in this dietary session, a fitness and exercise session. It doesn't matter what it is. Make sure their doctor has cleared them for this kind of stuff. That is going to be super important because, again, if they have a heart attack on the gym floor, and they're like, they pushed me too hard, up in front of a judge, you're going to be like, you got to prove to them. It's like, well, according to this, you said that you didn't have any heart problems. So like, what happened to you is your fault, right? I know it sounds harsh, but like, hey, you don't get to help anybody else if you're, if you lose your license. So we need to make sure that we are protecting ourselves legally as often as possible. So this is our PAR-Q. Has your doctor ever said, do you have a heart condition? You should only perform physical activity. Do you ever feel pain in your chest when you perform physical activity? Do you lose balance or dizziness or consciousness? Do you have any other reason you shouldn't, there's any of these questions. If they say yes to any of these, get a doctor's note before continuing. And a lot of people will come in with this, by the way. A lot of your clients that are coming into a lot of gym situations, who have actually said yes to some of these things will often have their doctor's note with them. They're constantly in communication with their doctor because they're and that's why they're at the gym. Their doctor has been like, all right, dude, like now's the time, like get your butt to LA Fitness, get your butt to 24, like now's the time for you to start taking this seriously. So a lot of times they will have already, if they do say yes, I'd say 4 out of 5 times, they will already have like a note with them. Then we have our general medical history questionnaire. Now this sometimes is applied, I don't particularly, I like NASM's general medical history questionnaire and I use it a lot if I really am just doing like personal fitness stuff. But like in a lot of other situations, especially like dietary ones, I will look for questions that are, directly related to nutrition instead. So if we look at like some of these, it's like, what's your current occupation, right? Knowing a little bit about that's super helpful. If you tell me that you work in an office, I know that that's a low energy environment, right? Does your occupation require extended periods of sitting? I love that question. I'm going to stray into the workout side of it here. But you know what's great about knowing if somebody sits all day? It can tell you a little bit about, like, again, low energy expenditure, right? But also they probably have tight hip flexors, because sitting is a hip flexed position. So I'm going to look for an anterior pelvic tilt the minute I get them up into a movement assessment. Does it require repetitive movements, right? And if they say, yeah, like explain it to me. What do you mean? And it's like, oh, I spent all day like reaching overhead like this. It's like, all right, well, that means that, you might have like some shortened muscles in your shoulder. I'm gonna look for some tightness in the rotator cuff, right? Do you have elevated, do you have to wear shoes with an elevated heel? Weird question, right? For a personal trainer to ask, like, do you wear heels at work all day? But guess what? That means that your ankle is in plantar flexion all day. So chances are your plantar flexor muscles are a little overactive and your dorsiflexor muscles are a little underactive. So those are some of our occupational questions. We got some recreational questions like, hey, do you do any physical activity, golf, skiing, whatever? Do you have any other hobbies that are, maybe sedentary? Do you like to read? Do you play video games? And then medical ones, right? Medical questions here at the end. Do you have any injuries or chronic pain? Have you had any surgeries recently? You ever been diagnosed with heart disease or diabetes? And are you currently taking any medications? And those are really good questions because, like, certain medications can interact with certain foods, certain chronic diseases. Obviously, if they say they're a diabetic, okay, great. We got to watch our sugar intake, right? We got to be careful, and protein intake. So that's the first thing you're going to gather right at the top. Contact info, health history questionnaire, list of current medications and supplements that they may be taking. Like, are you taking any supplements? It's like, yeah, I'm taking a fat burner. Ugh. Right. Okay, great. Good to know. Let's, knock that crap off. And then once we get all that, here's the new stuff. We are going to get into getting a food record or training log. And there's a couple different versions of this that exist. So all this information can help give you insight into your client's diet, their activity level, and it can help you formulate a plan, right? Once we've got an adequate, very clear insight into our part one, we can move forward into part two, right? So when we talk about diet history, like I said, some of these can be just general questions, right? They might be questions like, well, what does your normal diet look like? Walk me through like a typical day, right? Or maybe it's questions like, well, how often do you think that you get enough fiber in your diet? How often do you get like green vegetables? How often do you get like leafy vegetables? How often do you get, soda in your diet? How often do you smoke? Any questions like that, right? And so, these are some of your diet history questions, right? So we can do like, we're going to review their dietary intake in general, what some of their general eating behaviors are. If it's like, what time do you normally eat? And it's like, oh man, sometimes when I get really stressed, I'll often like, eat really late at night, or I'll even wake up in the middle of the night stressed out and I'll have to, I'm starving and I'll go get something to eat. And it's like, okay, great. That's called night eating disorder, right? And it's pretty common night eating syndrome, actually. Sorry. NES. Easy to remember because it's like the Nintendo console. And then current and long-term food habits, right? That's more where we're looking like, food logs and things like that. And then what are your exercise patterns, right? I want to know, if you are having trouble with an energy balance, why? Is it because you're, it's like, I watch what I eat every day. And it's like, okay, well, do you move a lot every day? Maybe not, right? So let's take a look here. There's a couple different versions, right? The first one we're going to look at is, like I said, the health history questionnaire. Going back to the top here, this is like what I was walking through just a minute ago. This is that general and medical history questionnaire is what NASM's going to call it. There's a couple other really good health history questionnaires out there. I think I've got some handouts put into, do I? Oh no, I have this one here. There's a couple other ones out there. You can make your own, actually, depending on like what types of questions you want to ask. But if we look at just like health history questionnaire, you'll find a million of these out on the internet. They even have some free ones. If you go to NASM's website and they have an affiliate with Next Insurance, and Next Insurance actually has some like, PAR-Qs and medical history questionnaires and stuff that you can actually download and templates and stuff. I think find one that works for you, you know, but there's a lot of these out there. Health history questionnaire, I'd say maybe say like nutritionist. Find one of these, make your own, or just use just use NASM's version, right? Southern Denver nutrition questions. Okay, Heart Center. Ooh, yeah, this is a very complicated one. So I don't know. I wouldn't. And then here we go. Look, they ask him, wait, what's a typical day? You know, and it's like, show us breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Type of food that you eat. You know, how many times per week, right? Heat and served or home cooked, fast food, restaurants, or takeout. How often is that happening? So this is their version. NASM's got their versions up on their website. You know, make your own, do whichever version works. But what you want to do is the health history questionnaire is just you gathering information about like what their general medical history has kind of looked like, right? And then we want to probably have a little bit of info about supplements just because they are so freaking common in the world that we live in. You know, I'm not a big like supplement fan. I think that's probably fairly clear by now. I take whey protein. I'll take creatine if I'm doing like, you know, specific types of lifting and stuff. Although that being said, I'm not much of a creatine responder, unfortunately, which is a freaking bummer because it works really well. But genetically, some people, they call them just non-responders, and like you just throw creatine into your body and it just doesn't do crap, except for water retention. So, you know, sometimes I'll try, even though I'm not much, it doesn't have much of an effect. You know, and then I, you know, will sometimes strategically use caffeine, although usually it's just I have my morning coffee and stuff. Those are the 3 supplements that I think have been time and time again proven to be effective in the world of weightlifting. That being said, you know, if I know that like, let's say I'm just like being really strict on my budget, that's the only time I'll often like cut salmon out of my diet. I try to have like fish a couple times a week. On average, if there's a time period where I know that that's not happening, I'll sometimes take an omega-3, you know. Every now and then I will occasionally take like a multivitamin if I am really worried about it. But for the most part, like, you know, supplementation is really just not something that I find is necessary if you have like a well-balanced diet. That being said, we want to ask about our clients because like we don't know, you know, a lot of people, they're so prevalent nowadays. People are taking, you know, so many different things. We want to know a little bit about it. And I like asking, this is totally just me, by the way, but I also like asking about supplements because I start to get an idea of how much money people are spending on their health. And it's like, well, why don't we eliminate the $100 a month that you're spending on different supplements that probably aren't doing much for you and throw that towards like a better grocery bill. You know, someone's like, oh, I don't know, like veggies are expensive. Eating healthy is expensive. It's like, eating healthy is not actually that expensive. Like I'm eating about 3,400 calories a week right now, or 3,400 calories a day right now. And I'm doing it with like all whole foods, not from Whole Foods, but I mean like with Whole Foods from Trader Joe's. And I'm dropping about $80 a week on groceries on average, you know. It's not that bad if you know how to do it. I will say it does take time. The one thing, you know, time is money, and cooking up healthy food does take time. So there is that. I know that some people are busy and working and they got kids. And so, you know, we get it. We totally get it. But if someone's spending a lot of money in certain ways, like we can find ways to kind of cut that out. We look at, you know, the use of their supplements. And also, I like this sentence right here. It also helps us identify the reasons behind their supplementation. You know, if you see that they're taking like a fat burner and things like that, it's like, okay, well, that's very clearly like what's, you know, your overall underlying motivation. Let's talk a little bit about that. So looking at the necessity, right, we're going to determine like, is a supplement necessary or not by, you know, follow-up questions, looking at their vitamin and mineral densities, and reviewing their food logs. You know, we haven't really talked about food logs just yet, but we're going to get to it in just a second. But food logs are a great insight into, you know, what their diet actually looks like. And when you see that, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, you know what? I'm seeing, you know, a lot of these foods here. I'm not seeing a lot of color in your diet. You're missing out on a lot of, you know, you get a lot of protein in here, so you're probably doing pretty well B vitamin wise. But like I'm seeing a lack of like your fat soluble vitamins. I'm seeing a lack of like phytochemicals, you know. Might be a good idea to maybe get like a multivitamin that has like, you know, A, D, E, or K, you know, something in there that might be effective. And so we can kind of guide our client in that direction. So moving forward from there, talking about our different types of food logs that we've got. There's a couple different versions that you can do, and they kind of apply in different areas. I don't think any of these are necessarily like do this one or this one. I think they're just, or like, you know, do this one and this one. I think that they are just useful in different scenarios, you know? So one of them is a food record, right? A food log, AKA like a food journal. And I freaking love food journals. They are such an incredibly effective tool. By the way, guys, you want to like pro tip that will totally endear you to all of your clients? Friggin' take an hour out of your day, go down to the dollar store, pick yourself up a bunch of journals, you know, nice-ish looking ones, put your client's name on the inside, go back, hand it to them and you know, put my food journal on the front, tell them to decorate it, tell them to do whatever the heck they want with it, and give it to them. And be like, there you go. That's your food log. I want you to log it every single day and tell me what it is you're eating, what time you ate it, and how much, right? That is great. It's a great, healthy habit to adopt. One of my favorite stories that I always tell people about, and you'll hear this is a very, very famous story. You'll hear it in personal training, nutrition lectures. You'll also hear it in a lot of like, if anybody reads like personal development books, you'll find it in psychology and stuff all the time. And they did this, and I think I already talked about this once, but they did this really interesting study where they had two groups of people, and they were like, hey, in about 8 weeks, we're going to put you on a specific dietary like plan, and we want to see, you know, what the effects are in regards to your health. But in order to do that, we need to know, we're going to make adjustments to your existing diet. We need to know exactly what your diet looks like right now. And so for the next 8 weeks, we need you to be really diligent about like food logging, because the diet that we write you is going to be specific to whatever it is that you say. So a lot of these people, like, you know, they're like, okay, great. And they didn't tell them to adjust their diet at all, right? They just said, we want to see what your diet is and we want to see it accurately, right? And so people went home and they started food journaling, and they did it for 8 weeks, and nearly everybody who food journaled. In the other group, they were like, all right, and we'll see you in 8 weeks for this study, and they didn't tell them to do anything. And what they saw is like the people in the test group lost weight over the course of that 8 weeks. And it certainly isn't because like they burned a bunch of calories, you know, writing in a journal. It was the fact that like they saw exactly how much food it is that they're consuming, right? If they got really, really diligent about writing that stuff down, they became aware, you know? And this is, you know, I don't want to end up going too long on this, but anybody who knows me actually knows that I'm kind of obsessed with the concept of awareness. I think the more aware you are of pretty much anything that's going on in your life, the more effective you are at taking control of that life. And I could spend all freaking day talking about that, but we won't. But they simply saw that like by coming to a little bit of awareness and just understanding like what it was that they were putting into their body, they were able to like, they started making subconscious adjustments. They were like, man, I have that much, you know, of this in my diet every day. That's crazy. That's a lot, you know? And so they made an adjustment, and then they're like, oh man, like I'm not getting enough of this. I should probably increase. And then they made an adjustment, and they noticed that people lost a substantial amount of weight, and like their cholesterol is improved, their blood pressure went down, every statistic across the board improved. And so that was the experiment, right? And these people were not told to adjust their diets. You know, they thought that the experiment was going to start in 8 weeks. So that's a very, very, one of my favorite things. So we love food logs, right? The versions that we've got for food logs, you know, are either going to be like, typically you're going to do like a 1, 3, or a 7-day period. You know, the 1 day, not super fast. I really like a good 7-day food log, and you don't necessarily need to keep this up for super extended periods of time. A lot of times what I'll tell my clients to do is to food log really heavy, you know, for like a 7-day or maybe 14-day period. And then we can review that during our sessions and look at stuff and kind of look for some underlying patterns. And then like they can take a break, and then like a couple months go by after they've made like some adjustments, and then we can do like another 7 or 14-day stint. And that way, it isn't, you don't want to be food journaling for the rest of your life. Like that's a lot of work, right? But just keeping a little bit of consistent logging there. And it doesn't have to be a physical food journal. It can be MyFitnessPal. I know that's a really, really popular app that's out there that a lot of people use. There's a lot of free food journaling apps out there and stuff. So what this does is it provides an objective view of the foods you're consuming, right? There's no opinion, right? You're like, oh, I don't eat that much chocolate. And then you look at it and it's like, okay, well, it's a measurable amount, right? And it offers like the idea of like what their short-term patterns are, Generally, I will say the number one thing that I find when I'm looking at clients' food logs is much less about like the portions that people are eating. I mean, we will see like overuse of portions, like, but that is kind of to be expected considering that like they're here to like lose weight, So that's never surprising to me. And honestly, it's never really surprising to the clients either. But you know what the big thing that my clients find is when they have those portions. And like, that's really what's like kind of breaking things up. The reason they have those big, huge portions is because they'll be like, okay, well, at 10 a.m. I had this, and then at 3 p.m. I had this, and then at 5 p.m. I had this. And it's like, okay, you had a pretty reasonable breakfast, you had a pretty reasonable dinner, but your lunch is huge, right? It's crazy. And it's like, you're going all the way from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. You're going 5 hours without eating anything. Like, no wonder, you're getting hungry and overdoing it, And I find that like it's the portion sizes and like the timing is like one of the number one things we can adjust. And it's like, okay, so somewhere between 10 and 3 from now on, I want you to get a handful of almonds and, or something like it. What's your favorite nut? What's your favorite like healthy little like proteiny, good fat thing? My favorite is going to be like, different types of nuts or seeds or whatever. And it's like, oh, well, I like almonds. Great. Let's go with almonds. And now what's your favorite like piece of fruit, or something like that. It's like, I really like grapes. Awesome. We're going to go to the grocery store, buy some grapes, buy some almonds, throw them into a Ziploc container, and you're going to bring them to work with you. And somewhere between 10 and 3, we're going to try eating something like that and see if that, keeps you from overeating at lunch. And at first people are like, what do you mean, Lou? We're going to boost the, we're going to eat more food? And it's like, we're going to eat more food. And that's going to help, stick on your dietary plan. And I'll ask my clients, like, what do you think is reasonable? What's a snack that you can have that's going to keep you from overeating later in the day? So that's part of why food logs are so helpful. They're definitely one of our favorites. Now, during a first session, one of the really effective tools that we've also got at our disposal is what's called a 24-hour dietary recall. And basically, it's just you're going to work your way backwards over the last 24 hours and, in real time, give me an evaluation of like what it is that you've consumed in the last day, right? And that's going to also aid in general eating habits, right? Kind of similarly to the food log, obviously, human memory is not exactly perfect. So sometimes this is an exercise in futility, but it's going to be like, all right, well, what'd you have for breakfast today? All right. Did you have anything before that? What have you, have you had any snacks? Okay, great. How much water have you had today? Let's try to think about how much we've been hydrated. No, you get a hot coffee this morning. Okay, great. Let's go back to last night. Did you have anything? What'd you have to drink? What'd you have to eat? Right, we're going to work our way through like the last 24 hours, working our way backwards until we get to, around where we are. It's like, okay, well, we started with breakfast. We don't need to do yesterday's breakfast, right? So we work our way backwards and we get a generally, good idea of what that looks like, in their general eating habits. And we can start to see a couple little patterns here. So not quite as effective as a food journal, especially because, again, like I said, human memory is flawed. But you know what the advantage to this is? It takes maybe 5 minutes and you can do it with a brand new client on your first session. So we do really like the 24-hour dietary recall. It's a really great tool in your tool belt, right? God, I always say that phrase. And yesterday I listened to a podcast with one of my favorite like trainers. And he was like, I hate to use cliches like tools and tool belts. And I was like, oh no, I love to use that cliche. And I've said it like 3 times today and that's popped into my head every time. Anyway, the next one we got is what's called a food frequency questionnaire. Okay, and a food frequency questionnaire is going to help us record basically how often your client is consuming certain foods, right? So food frequency questionnaires are another really helpful tool that kind of help your client sort of open their eyes to how often they are consuming either healthy or unhealthy things, right? So when you ask somebody, it's like smokers. This is a great one, right? It's like, well, sometimes you'll ask like a smoker, it's like, hey, how many cigarettes do you have in a day? And they'll go, oh, I don't know, not that many. It's like, well, do you know how many? It's like, no, I don't really keep too much of a track. Okay, well, how many packs a week do you buy? And it's like, well, about like 3 packs a week. And it's like, all right, well, 3 divided by, how many cigarettes are in there? 3 times that many cigarettes divided by 7 days per week. That's how many you have per day. And then they're like, oh no, it can't be that many. It's like, well, yeah, it's that many, right? Same thing is true with, how many times you have coffee per week, right? So food frequency questionnaires are great. It records how commonly certain foods you're eating on like either a weekly, monthly, or even yearly basis. It's great if there's a really lack of time. It's a super cost-effective way for you to kind of evaluate things really quickly. This is often, if I don't, if I will almost always do just a food frequency questionnaire, not necessarily like a written version, but at least like a verbal version with pretty much every client that I have at some point just during conversation with them. I might have them warming up on the treadmill for 5 minutes and be like, hey, how often do you have soda? Tell me how often you have like a coffee, and what's in that coffee. Do you take it black? Do you do a lot of cream? Do you do a lot of sugar? You doing frappuccinos, which are glorified milkshakes? Like, what types of how often are you bringing stuff like that into your body and stuff? And it's great because like that type of questioning can really kind of give you just a very basic, simple idea of what this stuff looks like, right? So it's great. It's quick. It's easy, and it's one of our most effective tools. Now, another one that we want to do, and I don't have it over here in our notes, but it is really important, is an exercise log. This to me should just go in your food journal. Because we're looking at a general exercise log. I tell my clients always put any physical, if you go for a hike, put it in your food journal. You go for a walk, put it in your food journal. You go to the gym, put it in your food journal. You don't have to tell me what your exercises, sets, and reps were. That's your workout journal, and that's different. And usually, like, I've got a copy of that, right? Unless I'm giving you like specific homework. So we love these different types of journals. They're really, really like effective tools, That's my advice, by the way, just in general. Just help yourself become as aware as possible. I was just talking to somebody recently about this. It's a good idea to keep an eye on your credit. Check your credit score regularly so that you have awareness of it. Check your finances regularly so you're aware of it. Anybody in here has ever heard of like mint.com? It's incredible. It's incredible. I love that freaking app. I check it every day. I got a text yesterday that was like, hey, dude, you are $20 over budget on coffee this week. And it's because I went to Starbucks a couple times this week, more than I normally do. And I'm like, God, that's $20 that's supposed to go towards my future, it's great. Awareness. We freaking love awareness, right? Or at least I love it. I'm obsessed with awareness. Anyway, so food journals and then like exercise logs, right? It gives you a really accurate insight into, the time that they're spending training, maybe what their energy needs are, their energy expenditure is, right? Sometimes I find it's too much. I love that. So it's my favorite thing to find because, it's like, hey, you are overdoing it a little bit. There's a reason you're so hungry. You're overeating because you're expending so much energy. And because you're expending so much energy, your body needs more energy. And so it's triggering all these things that are telling you that you need more energy. But, the larger something gets, let's just say for the sake of argument, guys, all of us make about a 5% error. This is a made up number. Let's say we over or under eat by about 5%. On average, if we are trying to get the right number of calories in. And then let's say you get really hungry and somebody else, they have like a small snack, so they're not so hungry, right? Well, if you're really, really hungry, you're probably going to crave like a pretty big meal. So let's say you really go nuts. It's like you want to bring in an 800 calorie meal, right? And we got 5% room for error here, right? And somebody else, they're relatively hungry, but they're not crazy hungry. They're going to bring in a 400 calorie meal and they're going to make a 5% error. Start to see where we're going with this, right? 5% of 800 is a lot larger. That's a bigger error. So, and those are made up numbers, I'm not saying everybody makes a 5% error, but like that's one of the reasons why overeating has been shown statistically to be so dangerous. It's not really even the fact that, it's all calorie balance at the end of the day. And if you overeat, but you balance it out later, you're good. But it is difficult to know how much you overate by the larger the portion sizes get. And that's why we, typically our dietary advice is like, hey, eat small meals frequently throughout the day. You will hear people say this. They'll say it boosts your metabolism, right? Anybody in here believe that anymore based on a class that we just went through with metabolism? Do you think that eating smaller meals throughout the day boosts your metabolism, makes you burn more calories? Anybody still believe that?
Nope.
Good. Because there is literally zero scientific evidence to prove that that's true. And you'll hear people say this analogy. I used to say this, by the way, when I first started my career, because I believed it too. You'll hear people say it's like throwing small logs on a fire, and it really keeps the fire stoked up. That's the analogy you always hear people say. It's like small bits on a fire, rather than like a big log on the fire that takes a long time to burn through, kind of keeps it squelched, right? Little tiny logs throughout the day boost your metabolism. It's not true. It has nothing to do with your metabolism. But at the same time, people who eat smaller meals throughout the day typically succeed more on a dietary plan. So if it's not their metabolism, why are they succeeding? There's less room for human error. They're less likely to screw it up. So it does work, even if it has nothing to do with your metabolism, right? And it's possible. Obviously, we've seen like incredible effects of like intermittent fasting and things like that. So we'll talk about intermittent fasting. It's going to come up because some people are all about like, well, what about not eating for a really long time and then eating all at once. There's some amazing stuff that intermittent fasting can do. I think the research is still out on it. I'm not a big fan of like working with intermittent fasting with my clients. I know Mo has actually goofed around with it a lot. Mo's a big fan of intermittent fasting. He's done it on a couple different forums, little self-experiments here and there. I've done little self-experiments here and there. It does not work very well for me because I become sort of a rage monster if I don't have food, which is just not pleasant to be around. But as long as it's the right number of calories coming in, it is also an effective way to lose weight. But I find that for some people, me especially, it's I'm likely to overeat. I'm likely to not eat the right number. Kenny, do you have a comment?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that. I said I've done the same thing. Intermittent fasting, and just tried it out, but then I just feel weaker because you need fuel.
Not a fan.
Not a fan.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, some people aren't. So really, really like food frequency questionnaires. Really, really like food logs. Really, really like exercise logs. Now, there are also clinical assessments, right? Now, this is something that we are not necessarily partaking directly in, but, nutritional consultants oftentimes will actually need like lab results. So like dietitians can tell someone to go to their doctor and get their blood work done, right? And we can look at those numbers for the most part. I mean, we are not, again, we're not medically trained. So we're not really trained to look at certain, blood work and, blood sugar, blood cholesterol levels and things like that. But we do know what the norms are, right? Those charts are very readily available to anyone, right? We can see like cholesterol levels, right? If you look at this in like chart form, our client is going to go to their doctor, they're going to get their blood work done, and we're going to say, okay, well, we want you to be somewhere, in this range. And if they fall into this range, they already know that they have high cholesterol. Their doctor has told them to seek out a nutritional counselor and like work on that cholesterol. Great. Well, guess what? I can educate you on what foods lower your cholesterol. Let's talk about getting your omega-3s. Let's talk about getting your omega-6s, plenty of unsaturated fats rather than saturated. Let's talk about improving these, and let's do some intense exercise so we can burn those cholesterols up and turn them into like, hormones, right? Let's do all the great stuff that's going to clean you out. Let's get some fiber in your diet. So they can assist in all of this, right? They can aid us in, sort of analyzing things. And there are some really great tools out there that dietitians have access to that we unfortunately don't. There are some really great softwares out there. My friend Rebecca, for instance, has some crazy dietitian softwares that have like all the nutrient compositions and things like built in there. We don't necessarily have access to that, but we do have access to that is a really great tool, friggin' Google. So if we look at like, let's say potato nutrition facts. They have a really fairly good breakdown here. No, it's not every single vitamin or every mineral, but it's definitely a little bit, more complicated than your traditional one. We got a little cobalamin in here, right? That's your B6, your B12. We got our magnesium in there. So we've got, a couple like pieces of advanced information, and then we can even Google it even further if we need to, tomato nutrition, right? We can see, hey, come on, Google. I've literally looked this one up before. I know it's on here, right? So you can see like there's some numbers, right? And so it's good. There's a lot of, and we know, like, with our big freaking crazy complicated PowerPoint we went through yesterday, we also know some good sources for finding those different vitamins and minerals. Now, like I said, those are not necessarily big things that we are looking at, right? We're not breaking down specific micronutrient distributions for our clients, but we are going to break down, general healthy eating guidelines. And this is where we come back to the idea of our DRIs, those dietary reference intakes, and the MyPlate food guidance system. Everyone in here is absolutely 100% allowed to help our clients further adhere to the MyPlate system. So you may not be able to prescribe someone and say, hey, I want you to eat a cup of broccoli today. You cannot say that. But what you absolutely are allowed to say are things like, hey, I want you to try to make half of your plate fruits and vegetables. And we can say that because that is a regular old USDA government recommendation. If the government says it, so can we. That's the one way that we are protected in terms of prescription. So that's one thing that you can kind of look forward to. Now, is that always is the USDA's information always like the best nutritional information? Well, now we're going to get into some, I don't want to get all political or anything like that, but we got to remember that the government is trying to save as much money as possible pretty much always, right? And they're also making like very general recommendations. And that's why, when we see things like milk on the MyPlate system, I've already talked about how like, is milk healthy? It's fine. I wouldn't say that it is unhealthy, but to say that it is healthy is almost a little irresponsible, and yet you'll hear the government, the government is very pro milk because we get a lot of dairy farmers in this country, right? So this is where you got to kind of like walk the line between like what your personal opinions on nutrition are, what you've found to be very effective in your careers, what you appreciate, what the scientific literature that you have read is, and what we are allowed to say. If you like intermittent fasting, great. If you like keto, awesome, cool. Instruct your clients, like guide them towards keto if you want to. But it is going to be a lot more difficult for someone to recommend things within like the normal USDA system, because like keto is like 75% fat, and our DRI for fat is only between like 15 and 30%. So definitely not as high there. But if you want to know like what you're absolutely, as long as it adheres to DRIs or adheres to the MyPlate system, that's another way that we are protected in terms of the advice that we are allowed to give. Can you give advice outside of that? Yes, but you have to make sure that it is from that guided self-help perspective. Like I said, I've got my opinions. My opinions are opinions. Bet you thought I was going to say something really profound there, right? With the big dramatic pause. But no, honestly, that's all they are at the end of the day. And I can absolutely say them, but I have to do it from the perspective of like guided self-help. I cannot tell someone to do what in my opinion, is best. And that is a line that so many trainers cross, by the way. I see it constantly. I see it all the time. Every gym that I'm in, I see trainers sitting down and telling someone specifically what to eat, or, they'll be like, hey, I just read this article on this. And it's like, you just read an article and you're going to make your client do that type of workout. That's another thing, that podcast I was listening to yesterday. They were talking about, have you guys heard of this blood flow restriction stuff? It's like the new.
Yeah, like they put like those straps on your like whatever part, like legs or arms.
Yeah. It's the new big thing. And they're finding
I see a lot of guys in the gym with those.
Yeah. They're finding what's really interesting about it is it actually has some really cool benefits. We see similar hypertrophic gains, so similar like muscle gains. But they're using super, super, super low loads. They're using like 20 to 30% of your 1 rep max for around 12 to 15 to 20 reps. So they're using high repetitions with really low loads, which means very, very little stress on your joints, which is great, right? It's like if you're trying to focus on recovery and you're trying to make sure that you're not getting your joints all beat up and stuff. So maybe a really good routine and still sees muscle growth. But what they see, and Charlie, Isaiah, sounds like you guys have seen this. Are you seeing people use rubber bands that they're just tourniqueting and tightening up? Yeah, that's crazy. That is an insane thing to do. These versions that they're doing the studies with, they're using blood pressure cuffs, specific tools where you can inflate it to there's a gauge, and it's I'm going to take it to 30 millimeters of mercury. Right? They take it to a specific number. You're using a rubber band. There's no way to gauge how much you're tightening it between session 1, 2, or 3. And chances are you're blocking, the idea here is that you allow arterial blood flow, but you do not allow venous blood flow. So you're getting blood in, but you're not allowing it to leave. That's the idea behind this blood flow restriction stuff. But if you tighten it too much, you're just stopping blood flow. That is not what they mean by blood flow restriction. And so it's this new thing that's showing up, and I'm seeing it too, by the way. I see people doing it constantly, and I'm like, ugh, it's so irresponsible. Anyway, same thing with diets. You are absolutely allowed to have your opinions, but please do your research and be responsible. So our regular dietary guidelines, though, you are allowed to educate any citizen on the normal guidelines. And so here they are. These are the REE methods. I'm actually not, if we had a big whiteboard right now and I were drawing a fake client on the whiteboard like I normally do, I would just calculate one of these out right now. But here's the REE formula. It's not bad, right? This is gonna be their body weight in kilograms, right? So let's say, like me, I fall into this category, 18 to, actually, no, I don't, I fall into this category. I'm not just 30 anymore, 30 to 60 years old here, right? So that's gonna be, my REE is gonna be 11.6 times my body weight in kilograms, and then I'm gonna add 879. Right. And then so that's going to give me an RE of about 1795. God dang, that's accurate. It's actually not bad. Mine's 1850. So that's pretty freaking close. And then I'm going to multiply it by an activity factor. So if I'm super sedentary, right, I'm going to multiply that by 1.6. Right. So that's about 2,800 calories a day, which guess what? This is my off week. I was telling you guys about how I'm on a deload week this week. So I did a very, very, very gentle workout yesterday. I burned about 3,000 yesterday. I went for a small walk. I did a very gentle lift session. And so this is pretty freaking accurate. I'm probably around, what was it, 1795? I'll bet if I went 1.7, yeah, that's just about perfect for me for maintenance. If I'm on a weight loss program, great. We take this number, right? And we subtract a little bit. Let's say I want to lose a pound a week, take 500 away. Boom, 2,500 calories a day. There's my plan for success if I am sedentary. Now, if I'm active, those numbers are all going to go up, right? So we're going to use some other different calculators today just because they're a little more accessible and a little easier to use, but that is our REE factor. This is usually a little bit more effective for athletes, the REE method. I'm a bigger fan of the DRI method. Personally, that's my favorite calculator that's out there. But there's a couple, like I said, there's a lot of calculators. They all disagree with each other. But at the end of the day, they all come out to be accurate. Now, what happens if it isn't, right? Let's say you put your client on their little weight loss program, right? And, it's not working. But I did my REE. I ran my numbers. I've been on the program for 2 weeks now. Haven't lost a pound. What the heck, right? What's going on? All right. Calculator's wrong. Right? Like, or you're not burning as many calories as we thought, or you're, not as good at gauging how many calories are in food as we thought. It's almost always going to come down to a little bit of human error somewhere. What we do know is that it's not your metabolism, 100%. We know that just the numbers are a little off. So guess what? We're going to make a small adjustment. I like the 100 calorie rule. If it doesn't work for this week, let's take 100 calories off. Doesn't work again, let's take another 100 calories off, right? I don't like to go more aggressive than that because we don't want to get into a starvation mode situation where your body is catabolizing muscle and things like that. I like to be really gentle. I like to take it nice and slow when it comes to weight loss programs. Same thing with weight gain. If I'm calculating how much muscle I expect you to gain, every week, and it's like, if you're gaining, a quarter of a pound of muscle a week, that's pretty freaking good. But if I see you gain, like a pound of weight and only a quarter pound of muscle, like I do not want a 3-to-1 fat to muscle ratio, because that's going to be a lot of fat that we have to trim off at the end of your program. So I'm going to be a little bit less aggressive. So, I like 100 calories. I think that's a really good rate that is nice and safe to kind of goof around with the numbers a little bit. So vitamin and mineral intake, obviously, this is again like looking at the RDA and AI values. This is again very much like a dietitian thing. So they're going to look at, they're going to punch all that food in. Their big software is going to do all this work, and it's going to be like, here's how much vitamins and minerals. So again, you're not really going to do a lot of that. So reviewing what we've been talking about until now, right? Talking about flowing a session. We're going to start, gather that information, right? Do your dietary intake, choose a method that works for you. If it's a first session, they don't have a food log yet, right? Probably. Maybe they do. If they do, awesome. But maybe do a 24-hour dietary recall or a food frequency questionnaire. Personally, I find this to be great after a week with my client. I find this to be great on my first session. And I never do a food frequency questionnaire really on paper personally, although here clearly it is recommended to do a paper version. I just like to continually ask my clients food frequency questionnaires, and I try to keep it up here as best I can. I like to have that one in conversation, So gather gather your information, and then let's start our next step, right? Step one, we've just talked like crazy about gathering info. Step two, let's solve this. Let's come up with a solution for this problem, right? And that is where it's like, all right, let's educate our clients, right? Step one, identify the problem. Step two, solve it, right? Step three, we'll implement the solution. We'll go through our, we're going to go through our sessions and stuff. But step two right now, we need to come up with the proper solution, right? You tell me you have a lot of sugar in your diet. Let's come up with a solution for getting that sugar out of your diet. You tell me you don't have enough like healthy vegetables in your diet. Great, that's the problem that I've identified. Let's talk about how to get them in your diet, right? You have an overeating problem? Great, let's figure out how to control your portion sizes. So assess the data and identify what their nutritional goals are. And then start educating them on the various ways to improve that intake. And maybe let's set some freaking goals, right? Here it is for some, some of you guys have already talked about this before, but some of you guys, it's goal day. The heart of literally what it is to be a trainer, right? We are constantly working on goals and, self-improvement. So this is where we are looking at, what is called the stages of change. You guys are going to see this so many times while you're here at Sochi, especially next module. But the stages of change is one of the things that we look at to determine how likely someone is to change. So, let's see here. Andres, are you ready today, right now, in this moment, to become the world's greatest jet fighter pilot?
Sure.
Really? I don't believe you. Right. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you some questions and like really get a clear idea. That's so funny. You're supposed to say no. I'm going to get an idea of, whether or not you're actually ready to change. Right. If I told you it's like, hey, we're gonna put you on we're gonna get you exercising 5 days a week. We're gonna get you eating all healthy fields. Like, we're gonna get this all done. We're gonna set this plan right now. Are they really ready to adopt all of those new behaviors in this moment?
No.
No, nobody is, right? So we need to identify like where they actually are. We got to get a clear idea, and that's where this model of change comes in, guys. This is what we all go through, by the way. This is a general psychological principle. You will know sometimes you move through certain stages of change really, really quickly. Earlier I mentioned, some finance stuff. It took me years to take my finances seriously. Like, I just was bad at money,
I'm the same way too.
Right. Yeah.
I'm starting now to realize that.
Yeah, man, I wish I'd started when I was younger. If I started when I was younger, I'd be in such a better place financially right now. It would be insane. I mean, and not even like a little amount. I'd be in just an incredibly better financial place right
Well,
now.
even physically too.
Yeah, right. Seriously. Yeah, so that's the thing, right? But if you gave me all the most amazing tools, you're like, hey, Brad, this financial plan right here, this is the world's most effective, greatest financial plan ever. And you gave it to me, I'd be like, oh, cool, thanks, man. And I just set it down. And I forget about it. I wasn't ready to change, right? And that's what we need to be able to identify very clearly. So let's take a look at what these stages of change look like. But what it is, right? It describes how individuals change their habits. And really the problem with most programs, guys, the biggest mistake that a lot of trainers run into with new clients, and the reason like you hear so many people say, my trainer sucked. I'll bet that's true. I'll bet your trainer, wasn't actually that great for you. And by the way, people love to say that. They love to trash their old trainers when they start working with you. It's such a weird thing.
Yeah, but you said before too that if they said that, usually that meant that like their trainer was good. They just didn't.
Exactly. They
You know what
did.
I mean?
Their trainer, I'll bet their trainer sucked for them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Either they didn't figure out like the best way to like connect, or there was just a lot of human error. It's always human error. The biggest mistake that a lot of people make is, the biggest problem is that people live under this assumption that everyone's ready to change right now. Everybody's ready for a weight loss program right now. And so you're this amazing trainer with this amazing information on dietary and physiologic and kinesiology. You got all this like great information in your brain. You're like, I'm a freaking awesome trainer. And you start working with somebody and you're like, why isn't this working? And it's like, oh, hey, how was your workout on Monday? Did you do your homework? And it's like, oh, you know what? I was supposed to, but like, my sister came over and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, great. Like, stay positive. Like, let's try to make that up somewhere else. Right. We live in, and like your clients are like this too. We live under this assumption that everyone, if I only had $1 million, I'd change. You know how many stories there are of people who win the lottery and then they go broke within the next like 10 years? How many stories there are like that? It's because they don't change. Or look at how many freaking professional athletes, right? This is why the NBA, and I think the NFL is starting to do this, but in the NBA, they have free financial classes for their players. Because they're like, look, guys, your careers aren't forever. And like, listen to Shaq talk about it sometime. Shaq's got some amazing stories about how bad he was with money at first. And now he is incredible with money. I love that man. Let's look at our different stages of change here. First one we're going to look at is pre-contemplation, right? This is the first stage that we all start in, even if we don't even realize that we are in it. And what pre-contemplation is, it's exactly like it says. Like, if contemplating is to think about something, right? Well, pre is before. It is before you are thinking about changing. So individuals who are in this stage are lacking the intention of making a change in the near future. They have no interest, right? You would come to me and tell me that you're going to make me, the world's greatest ultra marathoner. Like, you're a physical guy. We're going to make you an ultra marathoner, right? You're going to run 100 miles. I'm not really interested. I love running, but like, I don't know, I don't want to spend all day. I got video games to play. I got a couple of sedentary hobbies, and so like, I'm really not thinking about it, right? Individuals who are in the stage of change are really not intending to change, and within like the next 6-month period, right? So, for years, I tried to get my mom to quit smoking. I was so obsessed with it. I was like, Mom, you got to quit smoking. You got to quit smoking. It's so bad for you, all through high school, all through middle, my whole life. Actually, this is true. This is a very true, hopefully cute story. I was a little kid. I didn't know my mom smoked. And I remember like, I didn't have very many toys growing up. We just didn't have like, we lived on the road. And so like, I just didn't have but one of the weird things that I like to play with was actually my cat's toys, like those little mice. Weird habit, I know, but I used to like throw it up and just catch it, and I would throw it as hard as I could, and because it's so light, it would have a lot of drag, so I'd be able to run under it and get to it before it would hit the ground if I threw it as hard as I could. So I would do that, and I did that, and I came around the corner of the house, and there was my mom like smoking a cigarette like around the back of my house, and I saw her, and my mom describes it as this: like, I had like big eyes and went like, she goes, my face, I literally just like instantly like weeping because I was like a little kid and I was in school and my teachers were scaring the crap out of me every day, like cigarettes kill. I saw the commercials in the 90s, and I was like, no. And so
those commercials didn't help at all.
They were
at all, dude.
They were so harsh. They were so harsh in the day. Oh my God. And they used to play them during like, morning cartoons. Like I'd be watching like, Ghostbusters on USA, like the Ghostbusters cartoon, and like, or Ninja Turtles. And they'd play these commercials and I was scarred for life. Oh, anyway. So that is, I tried to get my mom to quit smoking. I was like, I think 6 at the time, my whole life. And she finally stopped when I graduated high school. That was like, that was my graduation gift. Usually the way my mom was in pre-contemplation for, I guess, 12 years. So that's individuals who are lacking the intention of changing, right? We measure it in someone who is not ready to change within the next 6-month period. Usually you are not going to have very many pre-contemplating clients. They already came to you, right? They sought you out. So, we're not going to run into too many of these, but I love this, knowing that this is here, because like, this is a great way for us to determine, if we do want to push our client to the next level, we can start planting some seeds early on and be like, hey, like, you've had a lot of success on your program. What about what's next? Like, do you want to get into, do you want to become an athlete? Like, what do you want to do after this? Right. So you can start planting those seeds early on. And also, I think it's a really helpful thing to kind of understand in our own lives, right? We all have family members, we all have friends. We have people who are definitely, not considering getting physically active, who are potential clients that we can help, and have a tangible, amazing, positive impact in this world, right? So that's pre-contemplation, not within the next 6 months, right? I'm sure everybody in here was not thinking about attending personal training school at some point, and then something happened, right? Right. And that's where contemplation comes in. This is the next step. This is somebody who is intending to change in the next 6 months. So question for everybody in here. How long did you think about joining Soch? I know some of you are like military and like, your benefits are amazing. So you were like, oh, I thought about it for about 10 seconds and was on board. But is anybody in here, anybody think about it for like months and months and months, like thinking about it, or weeks and weeks where you're just like on and off and on and off? Because it's a big time commitment, right?
Yeah, probably for a couple months, maybe like 2 to 3 months.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
was just because of work too, though. I don't like with the schedule and everything.
Seriously, right? Pretty common, guys. This is there's a reason we all do this. We are all very much, in this realm of thinking about changing. And what we often run into, and I don't have a sub note here, but we'll talk about it in other classes, we run into this problem of chronic contemplation. So, contemplators are people who are ready within the next 6 months, is what we say, right? We say this little 6-month window. But what happens if that 6 months comes and goes, right? And they don't pull the trigger? Well, we call that chronic contemplation. Doesn't necessarily, they legitimately are still thinking about it, even if they aren't pulling the trigger. And that is where a lot of us sit. We sit in chronic contemplation all the time. You know, I'm chronic contemplating about a lot of things in my life. You know, I think we all are. So that is your regular contemplation stage. Then, you know, once we get our clients to start, you know, how do you move somebody out of contemplation? We're going to talk about this later, but one of the best ways to get somebody to move out of it is to educate them. The more knowledge they have, the more light there is shined on this scary thing that we, you know, usually it's like a fear of the unknown. The more light we shine on it and make it more known, the more likely someone is to move out of contemplation, right? So Charlie, I'm assuming you said you thought about it for a long time. What was it that, what was the little factoid that kind of pushed you over to the edge? Do you remember?
Honestly, it was just because my schedule switched up, so I was able to attend either morning or the afternoon class. So
okay,
yeah.
And that's a big one too. I remember, I think you were one of them, but I hear it constantly from a lot of new when students are brand new. People go, "Oh, I can attend the morning or the evening." I didn't know that, and it changes everything for them, and they're like, "That's great." They get super excited about it, and like suddenly. I'll tell you guys, like I told you, I'm super big on awareness. I track data in everything in my life. And I've seen when students figure that out, their homework scores go up, like their attendance goes up, like all the numbers that I'm keeping track of on you guys, all of them improve when people realize and they start taking advantage of, you know, maybe morning, maybe evening, do what works for you, customize your program, right? Find success. I see them all go up. And it's because like, that little bit of education just pushes you forward. And you're like, oh, that is easy, right? Like my credit, for instance, my credit was shot because my car got stolen and my identity was stolen, and it was years of effort that I was just, all right, well, that's actually not true. You hear it online all the time. How many of you guys have heard someone say like, oh, fixing your credit's so hard, right? And that kept me away from it for years. And then I finally watched like a little bit of video, started learning about it. Guys, it took me like, I don't know, I'd say 4 weeks. 4 weeks of, you know, maybe an hour here and an hour there every now and then. My credit went up by like 120 points. No, this much effort, minimal effort. All those articles that are out there to like scare you about that stuff, in my opinion, dumb. But I didn't know. So people were like, well, are you ever going to fix your credit? And I was like, it's just a lot of work. No, what do I need credit for? You know, I'm not buying a house. So I started thinking more about it, started learning more about it, boom, started pushing me forward. Once we move out of the contemplation stage, this is where it's like, all right, let's do this. I'm on board, I'm thinking about it. Now I'm ready to do a couple bits to get myself ready. And this is the preparation stage. This is an individual who's ready to change sometime within the next like 30 days. This right here is huge. This is where most of your clients are going to be walking through the door. Most people that we get are people who are in the preparation stage. So it's a really vital step because oftentimes it's really easy to fall back into contemplation. You know, we want to make sure we are pushing someone forward, not backwards. And so again, education is huge, but one of the biggest things is actually removing obstacles. That's one of the best ways to keep someone moving forward, right? It's one of the reasons why I try to be as clear as possible with you guys when I'm talking about when homework is due. You know, I'm sure everybody in here is probably tired of me saying it's an even numbered day. I'm going to keep saying it. I mean, you're probably tired of getting the same text message every day. You're going to keep getting them. Like, I've got your homework posted on YouTube, Canvas, sent in your email as a hard attachment, and links in the email that go to the YouTube page, right? That's 4 places. I'm trying to remove as many obstacles as possible. Your job is to do the work. My job is to make it easy for you to do the work. I had a big rant at Sochi about this because I've done it in my career. My whole career has been spent as a trainer trying to make it easy for my clients to do their homework, writing them very clear routines that are easy to follow. Now, do certain here's a question for you about physiology that some of you might know, even though we haven't talked about this yet. Do certain muscles respond better to high reps than other muscles?
I would say yes.
Yeah, arms, they do a little bit better with high repetitions. You know, I know we talk about like low reps are a great way to build big muscle, right? So you want to make your arms bigger. Well, they do respond to the heavier intensity, but they do a little better with high reps. Your calves are primarily type 1 fibers. They respond really well to high repetition. But you
High
know what?
reps, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what? If I'm writing a program, a lot of times I just keep the reps range the same. Maybe it's not scientifically perfect, but it is easy to stick to. Now, if it's like, if that starts hampering, you know, I'm doing whatever I have to do to get the best results, right? Maybe it doesn't mean doing every best thing, but it's the program will get the best results, right? There's a difference between like, I don't want perfect to be the enemy of good. You know what I mean?
I have a question when it comes kind of sort of, because I understand, like, I know we already talked about like reps and like how many you should do and like generally, you know, depending on the muscles that you're working on. But like, what do you think about, you know how people usually do like a big push day, or you know what I mean? Like, and they would do like 4 to 5 reps only on certain muscles that they're using that day. And then like say the next day is probably all cable. So they'll do like 10 to 15 type of reps. What do you think about that? Like
Yeah,
that
so
up?
that's, they'll do like what's called sort of an undulating routine. So they'll do like
I didn't know the name
heavy,
for it.
heavy for compound and then light. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think that those can be really effective. They work really well for athletes, especially like mid-season. It's a great way to maintain a lot of your gains in like a very relatively high stress situation, you know? So like we're going to talk about doing an undulating routine. We'll talk about like how that works when we get to our program design classes, but we'll have like a stabilization, which is like a high rep day, a strength, which is like a mid rep day, and a power, which is like a low rep day. And you would do like a total body routine. I think those are great. I think that they can be very effective. I don't know that they've been shown to be more effective. But if you start plateauing on a very linear routine, an undulating routine is a great way to change it up. So I think that it's just another really effective thing. But yeah, some people are like,
Can you say the name of that real quick? Can you say the name of that type of routine?
Yeah, look up undulating periodization. And it only works with total body. So you can only do undulating if you're doing like a total body routine. Otherwise, you would end up doing like high reps for the legs, low reps for the chest, mid and right, you know. So
yeah,
you don't
that
want
makes, yeah.
But yeah, like I'm doing a slightly undulating routine next week when I come back off this like little, I'm on a deload week this week, but next week will be, well, the first week will be all 5 reps. And then the next week will be all like 3 reps. Yeah. And then the week after that will be 5, then 3, then 1. So I'll have like a really heavy day, and that's how I schedule it. Whenever I want to retest all my 1 rep maxes, that's like my way of doing that, because I know I'm gonna have basically one day. Like that 1 rep max day is just not great for building muscle, you know. But it is great for me to keep track of my numbers, which helps me in all of my other routines. So that's how I structure it, you know. All right, so that's the preparation step. Like I said, most of your clients are going to be coming in here. So our goal with most brand new clients is to find ways to make exercise and dietary, you know, goals easy to follow, right? If it's an app, great. If it's a food journal, great, right? If it's coming in and doing their homework every day, great. This is also one of the reasons why I try to schedule my clients at the same appointment time as often as possible. And I'm really anal about it. And I'm like, hey, I've got time here and here. And it's like, you usually book into 7 a.m. Why don't we keep it at 7, you know? And it's like, because I'd love to, you know, I'll come in on 7 on Tuesdays, but I'd like to sleep in until 8 on Thursdays. And it's like, let's pick 7 or 8, please. I'm strict about it. And my clients are like, he's not working with me. I'm like, I am working with you. I'm keeping your, you know, I know how human habits work. If you're all over the place, inevitably you're going to miss one session because you're going to forget which day is which. You're going to show up at the wrong appointment time, or you're going to be demotivated and tired, or, you know, there's a million things that can go wrong. So next one we got is the action stage. This is somebody who's actually made explicit changes, right? So they've made dietary changes, they've made, you know, exercise changes. They haven't necessarily maintained it for 6 months. So this is like This is a critical part of the stage of change. This is the danger zone, right? Oh, you know what? Here's a perfect example of somebody going through the stages of change. I am in the action stage right now of getting on Canvas every day and making the day available so that you can download the PowerPoints. But it clearly wasn't habit. This morning I forgot, right? Hopefully tomorrow I won't. Right. So what am I going to do? If I'm, I'm going to make it as easy and accessible. I'm going to try and make sure I'm probably going to put a Post-it right up here on my screen later today once I go downstairs to the office and get myself some Post-it notes. And I'll see it every day and it'll remind me, anybody start a new job and forget to clock in regularly? Pretty freaking common, right? And you're like, ugh, sorry, new boss, I forgot to clock in again, right? It's not part of your habits yet. So clients who are in the action stage, they've made some changes, but it's not like part of their being yet, right? And that takes about 6 months, honestly. I know that you'll hear people say, 21 days to make like a new habit? That's true. 21 days, we do see like a substantial improvement. It's about how long the brain takes to really attach on to like a new habit, but you are still in a danger zone of eventually relapsing out of that habit for about 6 months. Once you're in 6 months, it really becomes what we call maintenance. And this is somebody who has maintained substantial changes. Really, we are just working on preventing relapse. They're not as much in the danger zone, and then eventually there's real like termination. We don't see termination listed that often because it's like, but that's like, there's really no temptation to like return to old habits at that point. But again, most of your clients, they're going to be showing up right in this area here: preparation, action, maintenance. Sometimes you'll get clients who are already in maintenance. They're like, hey, I've been working out for a long time and I'm just looking for somebody to get me to the next level. Oh my God, great. Like, awesome. Let's just, keep riding that wave, right? But a lot of times our job is to push people through these stages of change. So we want to have a pretty good understanding of these. Guys, you're going to see a million questions over the 9 months that you're here related to all of these. So get really familiar with them, make flashcards, get super familiar with which ones are which. This is the only one that you'll probably not see that often. But and one of the easy ways to memorize, you'll memorize them in 2 ways: memorize what their definition is, and then pay attention to what their timelines are. Pre-contemplation, no change in the next 6 months. Contemplation, some change somewhere within the next 6-month period. Preparation, change sometime within the next 30-day period. Action, they've made changes, they have not maintained them for 6 months. Maintenance, they have maintained them for 6 months. So it's like these, 6 month to 30-day little increments there. So get used to what those increments are and get used to what their definitions are. Are they thinking about changing or not? That's how you want to identify them, and then identify the timelines. Trust me, you're gonna see them a lot, especially next mod. When we get to next, our exercise psychology class, we're gonna talk a lot about this. This is all chapter the goal setting stuff, and then the stages of change stuff is all chapter 20 of your NASM. If you do want to peek in there and take a look, you'll find it in chapter 20, I think. All right, well now let's talk about some goals, right? So goal setting, huge part of what we do as well. Remember, we are applying guided self-help. So we have to let our clients create their own goals. And there's a lot of different types of goals out there. We like them. We like all goals, but some of them are more effective than others. And so we got to look at like what the idea is here behind what our clients' goals are. So we've got the difference between like outcome-oriented goals and process-oriented goals. And we really like both of them. But I like to have a combination. I like to have a good blend, Outcome goals are the ones that usually people make. These are goals where the end result is achieved by like changing dietary habits. These are where the goal is a specific outcome. That's another definition. That's actually the definition in our next class will be, outcome goals are goals with a specific outcome in mind. Usually it's a very objective, often number-based situation. So it's like the goal is like an outcome such as I want to lose 10 pounds, right? Okay, great. Like that's a great outcome goal, right? Versus like a process goal, which is, I want to get better at a specific process, which is maybe like the goal. I want to get more vegetables into my diet. right? So the end result is complying to specific like habits, right? Like I want to have $1,000 saved by February 15th, right? That's an outcome goal. I want to be better about like tracking my spending. That's a process goal, right? I want to improve my 1 rep max to 225 pounds, right? That's an outcome goal. I want to consistently hit the gym uninterrupted for the next 21 days with only taking days off on Sunday. That's a process goal, right? So that's just little slightly different things here. Why is my phone blowing up today? So that's what we're looking at there. So, we really like both these types of goals. Again, like a blend is really good. I'll tell my clients, like what is like a specific maybe weight loss goal or, muscle gain goal, like, blood sugar goal, cholesterol goal, whatever. Great. And then I will often also have them create like a couple process oriented goals, such as like, okay, well, I want to make sure that I'm physically active this often, I don't need you to get 10,000 steps every day, but maybe the goal is to like average 10,000 steps, over the course of like a week, 4 weeks in a row, get better at the process. I've actually even had like process oriented goals as simple. I've done this with a lot of clients actually. A lot of times it starts as a joke, but it becomes a real thing where it's just like, I just want you to be a little more positive about the idea of exercise. Cause some people like, it's this weird love-hate relationship with it's like, they're like, all right, what do you got for me today, you friggin' torturer? And it's like, come on. I want you to think of me, don't think of me as like a fun activity, not like a torture, so that's sometimes like even a process goal. So how do we provide this information? Well, we're going to impart this, different conversations, throughout our sessions consistently. We're constantly reminding our clients. A lot of training, guys, is standing around. A lot of it is like resting between sets, having a good conversation with your client, talking to them at the water fountain while they're filling up their water bottle in between sets. So that's a great opportunity for you to continually talk and impart knowledge onto your clients. It's a great chance for us to clarify any misconceptions or inaccurate information. If they're like, well, carbs are bad for you. And it's like, actually, and then over the next 3 sets, we're going to talk about why carbs are really good for you and a great source of vitamins and minerals and blah, 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 blah. We can hand out sample meal patterns, which actually I've got a couple versions here. These are available on choosemyplate.gov. But these little handouts here, these are great little things to keep. It makes you seem more professional. It makes your client feel like you're putting a little bit of extra effort in, and it does make it, they might find a tip on here that does make their program easier for them to adhere to. So, little things like there's 10 general nutrition tips, right? Vary your protein routine, right? Mix it up, right? Get some beans, get some peas, nuts, seeds, try different poultry, try different fish, right? Focus on whole fruits rather than like skinned fruits, right? Or canned, right? Because that's going to have more fiber in it. Try to go with like, whole grains rather than processed grains. Drink less beverages that have like a lot of sodium, fat, and sugars in them, right? Don't drink your calories basically, right? Drink water instead of sugary drinks. Everything you eat matters a lot. It's the right mix of foods, right? Turn small changes, or here's like 10 tips for eating on a budget, right? Number 1, make a freaking list. Oh, that's so huge. Cook once and then eat all week. That's what I do. I'm all about the meal prep life. Find a way to get the best price. This is one thing that I do. I love Trader Joe's. They are super cheap. I never buy my paper towels or anything like that at Trader Joe's. That stuff is crazy expensive. So I'm willing to spend an extra couple dollars to drive across town to Target because that's, where I'm going to get a much, much better deal, or Walmart or whatever. There are some tips, save money on your groceries. A little bit of effort, but like once it becomes part of your routine, it's easy. Here's some high protein plant foods. There's a great little handout that shows how much protein is in like plant-based sources. If your client, if you are trying to get, people love their protein, but they rarely want to eat plants. So finding a way to kind of enhance that in your clients. And then here's a really great label. You should be teaching your clients how to read nutrition labels. Here's a really great handout to make that easier. Right. And so it'll tell them first thing you need to look at, right? Serving size, right? And this, by the way, is actually the new nutrition labels, that have been kind of updated in the last couple of years. So it's a guide on how to read that. Those little handouts, awesome. super healthy, super helpful, right? And then once you are done with your session, right? Once you've maybe sat down and done this whole nutrition consultation session, now you need to summarize everything up. So this is another one of the most important things. Some of you have probably, well, I guess some of you, by some of you, I mean, yeah, Charlie, you've heard this because you started in the sports pod, right? We talk about this when we talk about sales. Always summarize up everything you've talked about at the end of your session. Part of this is what I call managing expectations. You always want to manage expectations at the beginning. Be like, hi, my name is Brad. Here's what we're going to be doing today. Boom, 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 boom. Walk them through it so it becomes less intimidating, right? Then go through it. And at the end, okay, here's what we talked about today. Boom, 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 boom. You guys notice how every one of our lectures starts with an intro and ends with a summary, right? A lot of times I move through it really quickly, but just a little bit is enough to like relight up your brain. So always summarize your nutrition consultation sessions. Give them the opportunity to ask any questions, even if they don't have any. Go over anything that you might have run through your brain and be like, oh, I forgot to talk about this, right? Go over it because you don't have PowerPoints to help you. And then discuss ways that they are going to put this into practice. So it'll be like, all right, so Kenny, walk me through what you're going to do this week to improve your veggie content, right? Cody, tell me a little bit about what your plan is for getting more activity this week. We want to do this. Tell me what it is, right? So we're going to, walk our people through and get them, get it very clear as to what it is that, we want them. What are their goals over the course of the week, right? Review those goals. Review, before they leave. It's like, all right, so our goals for this week, we want to try to get fruits and vegetables in our diet every single day. We want to try to get as many colorful plates in as we can. And we want to hit the gym at least 3 times this week before I see you again on Monday, right? That's great. Those 4 goals. And then that is going to be the first thing that you do next session. You'll be like, all right, did you get more fruits and vegetables? Did you get your 4 sessions in, right? And then another thing that you're going to do, and this is arguably, if you forget everything I tell you today, remember this one. Make a freaking plan. Put your next appointment on the books. Do not make the mistake of letting your client be like, all right, I'll call you to book my next appointment tomorrow, right? Never, ever, 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 ever. Every session, guys, for the rest of your careers, it always ends with that next session booked, at least as often as possible, because they're going to, there's one of the reasons why you need to get very good at time management as a trainer. Buy one of these. Don't use your phone. It's in your pocket. You should be able to glance at this every 10 seconds. My session ends in 4 minutes. It'll take me 1 minute to book their next appointment. We need to end in 3 minutes. I cannot teach this to you, unfortunately. I can say it a lot. You're just going to have to experience it. It'll be your first year of like, God, Sally left. I'll call her later. And then you're going to call her and be like, hey, we got to book your next appointment. And she's like, oh, okay, great. And it's like, we usually meet on Mondays, right? And it's like, yep, let's meet on Monday. It's like, can you do Tuesday? It's like, I already, in between when I left the gym and when you called me, I decided to have a date with a friend. It's like, right? Get it on the books as fast as you can. Always plan for your follow-up appointments as quickly as possible. So, how are you going to get that follow-up? Well, you're going to be friendly and you're going to build rapport with your client. Your client is going to enjoy their time with you and they're going to come back. You're always going to review their goals, and that is going to already put their brain in a forward-thinking situation, which is huge, by the way. We'll talk more about doing this in interviews in later classes, by the way, but this is also something you can do to make sure you get a job. When I'm going to, one of the biggest tips I always tell people, Charlie, you'll remember this. When you're going in for an interview, speak as if you've already got the job and, talk in that forward tense, right? If you're in a sales session, you're going to say something like, so over the next few weeks when we're working together, what I want you to do is X, Y, and Z, right? They haven't even bought sessions yet, but you are speaking as if they are already your client. And that's great. So by reviewing their food logs and things like that, you're going to put them in their own brain. They're going to be forward thinking. which means they're gonna want to book their next session. They're like, this was great. I'm fired up. When are we meeting next? And it's like, we're scheduled to meet again on Monday. And it's like, can we meet on Friday? It's like, hell yeah, we can meet on Friday. Right? Like, let's get that turnover rate. Let's get a redeeming bonus on our paychecks, right? And the more we meet with someone, the more of an impact we're having on their life. We're making a bigger difference in this world, right? And if that doesn't get you super excited to do all this weird paperwork stuff, I don't know what will, because paperwork sucks. But it's a means to a great end. Assess their feelings and energy. This is another one. During that follow-up session, be like, hey, how did it feel this week, right? Did you find that it was easy to adhere to? Let's talk about like what worked and what didn't work. And it's like, you know what? I found that like the snacking was actually kind of hard for me all day because I just wasn't hungry enough. Okay, great. So like, it sounds like overeating isn't as big of a problem. It sounds like undereating is kind of a problem, and giving yourself fuel. Let's find a way to make those calories a little more manageable, right? And then discuss any subjective information about their performance. So the subjective part, this is going to be talking about like, hey, how did you feel this week, right? Did you find that it was easy? Were you excited? Was this difficult for you? Did you have a good time? Did you have a bad time? Walk me through what your feelings are, right? I love doing stuff like that, right? I love to review that with clients, with students, with everybody. It's something I like to know. That's why I say constantly in between sets, how you feeling? That's like my catchphrase. You'll hear me say that constantly. How you feeling, guys? Right? I love to ask that because like a lot of times people, they might be thinking about stuff and that's great, but if they're uncomfortable or, they're feeling great, I want to know a little bit about that subjective stuff. Objective is easy. It's easy to measure. Subjective is the stuff where it's like, I don't know, I feel uneasy. And it's like, okay, great. Well, how do I put you at ease? How do I make you more confident, right? And then during any of your follow-up consultations, this is where we do all of our normal shtick, which is we're going to reevaluate their weight, their body composition, take them over to the scale, right? Throw them on there, get their body fat again, and calculate. It's like, hey, we've lost maybe 3 pounds, right? And we've lost 1.5% body fat, which means you're maintaining muscle pretty well, right? To be fair, we did lose some muscle, right? Oh, and we're seeing that your water content's a little bit lower this time, right? If your water content's lower, that might explain some of your weight loss. Maybe not all that weight is fat. That's okay. But we do need to be aware of it. Next week, when we check these numbers, you might notice they're not quite as dramatic as this week. So we're also managing expectations ahead of time. That's one of the reasons we do like checking in on a weekly basis. And then we can also revisit their short-term and long-term goals. So we can go back and be like, all right, what are some of the short-term goals that we met this week? We didn't talk too much about short-term or long-term today, but short-term goals, usually they're like something we want to achieve within maybe the next 30 days. Long-term goals are maybe something we want to achieve for like 6 months, right? So it's like, hey, we wanted to work out X number of times in the month of January. We're getting to the end of January now, right? So how are we doing on that? Or you think you're going to meet your quota? And then like a long-term goal is like, maybe a weight loss of 25, 30 pounds, right? And then, determine the need for additional appointments. So this is where, especially if it's a nutrition consultation, we're going to be like, all right, well, how often do we need to have these nutrition consultations versus our normal personal training sessions? If you're doing like a blend. I personally, as much as I do like talking about nutrition, I like to kind of do it all at once. That's really my style. I know I'm here lecturing right now, so this is kind of surprising to you guys, but like I actually don't really like sitting down for a full hour with clients, like one-on-one, just going over nutrition. I like to work nutrition into my training sessions. One of the ways that I like to do this is I like to do like a blended half and half session. And be like, all right, we're going to do sort of a shortened version. I'm going to teach you your new routine as an intro, and we're going to do a little bit of like nutrition education at the second half of the session today. I like to do that because that ensures that on a new routine, which is going to cause someone to be more sore than normal, they get a little bit less stress, so they'll be a little bit less sore, and I don't have to spend the entire time only talking about nutrition. I don't do that because I don't like talking about it. I do it because I find that if I do a full nutrition session, sometimes my clients get a little antsy. They're like, I kind of paid for the moving part of things, So I just find that like it's a great way for me to sort of compromise. I'm like, I know you don't want to talk about the nutrition stuff as much, but it's huge. We have to have this conversation, you know? There are a couple other sessions out there, by the way. So at the very end here, you know, what are the different ways you can do this? There's group nutrition sessions. These are great ways to just give out almost like a lecture the way we just did today, you know, like little tips and tricks. I used to do that for my boot camps actually back in the day. When I did boot camps, I would once a month do like a fun like nutrition day. One time I even brought out like a whole cooking thing out to the park. It was crazy. Never doing that again. But you know, I'd bring a little whiteboard out there and I'd show everybody how to calculate their numbers and a little bit of like, you know, just educational information, little workshops, you know. You can go to health and wellness fairs, which is a great place for you to sit down with someone and maybe have like just a little 5 to 10 minute conversation. You know, take a look at what their body fat percentage is and things like that. A lot of times you'll just bring a scale and a body fat tester. Sports competitions, booth conferences, they all kind of look kind of similar to that. And that's where you can have just short little conversations, get somebody excited and be like, all right, well, here's my card. Give me a call. Let's set up a session. Actually, that's a terrible way to do it. What you should do is get their information and call them and set up a session. What am I talking about? Never give out your card. I mean, give out your card, but don't rely on that. They'll never call. So if it is a really short session, you know that this is where the 24-hour dietary recall that we talked about earlier is so helpful because it is short, it's fast, it's easy, right? Review the information and like, you know, talk about like, well, what is your energy output and what does your energy intake look like? And look for the needs for changes, right? Assess, be like, okay, here's where I'm saying, you know, we got a lot of sugar front loaded into this diet, right? I'm noticing a lot of your breakfasts and snacks tend to be very, 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 very sugary. And that causes your meals later to be a little bit larger because what's probably happening is your blood sugar is spiking after those sugary meals, which causes you to want to overeat later because your blood sugar crashes afterwards. So if we can maybe not even necessarily like, you know, I know that like some people are really hesitant to reduce your sugar. Why don't we just try to get something that slows down that sugar consumption? Again, something really fatty or something a little proteiny in there with it is going to slow all that down. Maybe set up a single goal. Like if you don't have that long to really like work through them with their goals, maybe set up like one small one and, you know, come up with a plan to meet that individual goal. That's a really, really quick, easy one. Now, at the very end here, outside of like short sessions, no long sessions, whatever. One thing you do have to remember, guys, is the HIPAA Act of 1996. I am not going to spend a lot of time going over this, but basically it protects insurance and health workers and personal trainers and stuff, and it protects their clients. You should never share any piece of client information with anybody else ever. Your wife, I don't care. Doesn't matter who it is. Do not share. Their wife, doesn't matter. Their husband, doesn't matter. Do not share that information. If it's not the client, it's a conversation between you and them only. Anybody in here who's ever talked to like a doctor and stuff, they call that the doctor-patient confidentiality. This is trainer-patient confidentiality. So make sure you always keep an eye on that and protect that and always do that. So summarizing everything up, because it's always a good idea. Obviously, health and dietary benefits can be gained through consultation. You are basically trying to get all of this information out of your brain, shoved into theirs. That is going to help your clients meet their goals. Registered dietitians are the ones who can actually prescribe specific dietary recommendations. We can tell someone what dietary recommendations are, and then we can guide them there. This is a different way to use this phrase, but the way I always say it is it's like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You know, normally that's used to describe like a stubborn person. But in this case, we can lead a horse to water. We cannot make them drink legally. So you can surround that horse in water, you know, pick them up and drop them on an island. But, you know, don't put their head in the water. Usually a lot of times your first session is just going to be gathering information, talking about goals and figuring out a little bit about their health history. And then we can sort of, you know, help them come up with a, you know, work with them to come up with a plan, you know. Isaiah, what do you think is going to work for you? Cody, what is your favorite type of food? You know, like getting that information and like finding ways to work it in. We do want to remember our 6 stages of change. Try to identify where your client is in the stage of change. If you got somebody who's in the contemplation stage, you know, they're thinking about it, but they're not really ready just yet, writing them a program is not going to help. What is going to help is educating them and making it seem less scary to take those first steps. If they're at the preparation stage, now we're just going to try to remove some obstacles, right? We educate them on the obstacles in contemplation, that gets them to move forward. We remove the obstacles in preparation, that gets them to move forward. In action, we keep pushing them and maybe try to get them into a further level. It's like, hey, you've made some changes. Let's try something harder. And they're like, harder? I'm barely adopting this. And it's like, oh, and then like, you know, it's a motivating factor, right? But you know, be careful. You don't want to push too hard. And then HIPAA Act. You know, don't go blabbing. And the other HIPAA Act is also like keep a record of all your stuff. You know, you should have a record of your clients' sessions and things like that. And that's it, guys. That's how, you know, that's a lot of general information on how to run your sessions. Take all that. Maybe, you know, if you're in this call right now and you're like, I'm not doing this, that's okay. It really is. So a lot of what we said today applies to normal training sessions. If you're not really that interested in working on the nutrition side of things, that's cool. But like everything I just said today is valuable enough to be its own job. There are a lot of nutritional counselors out there, you know, and there's a lot of jobs for just working with people, you know, not training them even one-on-one. It's just working on their diet and stuff. And it's great because it's in their hands. So hopefully it was insightful. Any questions? You guys feeling good? Comments?
I'm pretty good, bro.
Trivia? All right. So I'll kill the recording and I'll see you guys tomorrow.